and what you're working on right now.
Sure. Thanks so much. It's a pleasure to be here. It's been a while since I've spent a lot of time on the San Jose State campus. I did teach at the MBA one level course for about 10 years back in the late 90s, early 2000s. So pleasure to be back. By way of background, I'm really a kind of true cosmopolitan Silicon Valley tech exec. I've gone in and out of corporate functions, early stage entrepreneurial, as well as even some nonprofit roles. So I went to Texas Tech for undergrad, went to work for Procter and Gamble, very core traditional consumer products packaging. Then I went to Harvard Business School, came out, went into consulting, and was out here in Silicon Valley right when it made the complete transition to tech. And it's been a great, amazing ride since then. I have been everything from a Fortune 500 chief marketing officer to an AI unicorn company chief marketing officer. Also taken a couple companies to exit, including one with a 20x return on invested capital that we sold over to Getty Images. In between that, I've also started my own company, raised seven figures, and ran it for over a decade. And today, I'm focused on a nonprofit called Discovering AI, really focused on how do we ensure young people like yourselves are adequately prepared to thrive in the age of AI, in that the educational system and environment is not yet set up to support your transition when in fact the workforce itself is expecting and demanding that, not only of the graduates of college, but high school and even down at the elementary. So very much focused on ensuring that this generation is adequately prepared to thrive in what is a very fast moving professional and innovative environment. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you so
Thank
much
you
for
so
being
much,
with
Amy.
us.
Yeah.
David, would you like
Uh,
to introduce yourself? Same prompt. Tell us a little bit about your entrepreneurial experience and what you're working on right now.
yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. And I'm David. Originally, I'm from the country of Georgia. And throughout my career, I've been mostly involved at different startups. I myself, I'm a 3x founder. One of those startups was a success, but two others failed, unfortunately. But it's part of the startup game, right? So I most of my experience has been in product management or leading product direction in general as a founder or as a PM. And my experience spans AI, blockchain, and yeah, those are kind of kind of cliche and buzzwords, or used to be. But yeah, so I was part of an AI startup back in 2017 because before before all this recent AI hype, and I worked as a product manager at an AI startup for almost 2 years. Got I got very hands-on experience with early LLM models. Back then, it was GPT 2.0, and yeah, I've been part of different blockchain startups as well as a founder, and yeah, in general, that's another space where I'm super interested and involved. Then I came to the US 2 years ago, finished my Yale MBA 2 years ago, just this spring. And last year, I also spent a year at Draper VC, one of the venture capital firms. I was focusing on AI, blockchain, and fintech startups. It was a great experience. And now I'm working at OKX, which is a crypto exchange, but I'm focusing on the payments, wallet, and infrastructure part. So that's a very interesting experience as well. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much, David. And thank you both for our panelists for the thorough introduction. I like, David, that you shouted out that you've been involved in two kind of very hyped up sectors like blockchain and AI. They
Mhm.
get a lot of attention, especially in the news lately. You can't really open up anything related to startups without seeing at least a few startups about AI.
Mhm.
So kind of based on that, and kind of living through, the peak of the hype cycle of crypto and then seeing it, blockchain and then AI. And this is for both of you, but through kind of living in those different cycles and the things that got all that attention, what has been something you've seen that differentiates like someone taking advantage of, a buzzword and then someone actually using that technology to solve a real problem?
Yeah, probably the biggest differentiator has been to me, like both of them used to be super hyped, right? Maybe AI is in its peak right now, right, in terms of hype and even margins and revenues, right? Like we saw yesterday's Nvidia's earnings, right? But probably the biggest differentiator to me has been how quickly AI companies were able to actually find paying users and find a better product market fit. So with crypto and blockchain, like there is one very obvious product market fit, which is provided by Bitcoin, right? Which is kind of an alternative to the existing financial system and the banking system. The banking system, which is fractional banking, and it's levered up 10x essentially. Behind every dollar, there is only 10 cents of real actual capital, right, at the banks. While Bitcoin provides a drastically different approach. Everything is backed one to one. So the backing is another topic of discussion, what those currencies are backed by, but still. So that's a very apparent product market fit to my opinion, and that has been there. But besides Bitcoin, there have been so many different waves with crypto, right? From all these different ICOs to NFTs to DeFi, etc. But nothing really stuck. Just like AI companies were able to really monetize their models and even their businesses like super quickly, and the revenue trajectory of these new AI models have been breaking all the records, right? To me, that's the most significant difference. And also that's kind of the difference between backing that hype with actual paying customers and product market fit. So we have to see. There is also lots of vapor in AI space, but to me, that's the biggest differentiator.
Yeah.
If I jump in on that just real quickly, David, I love your comment of
Yeah.
a lot of vapor in that space as well. A couple things to chat about that. As I mentioned, I was the chief marketing officer for an AI unicorn company, Samba Nova Systems. When I was there, it was valued at $5 billion. And I think across the board, I can't cross any lines here, but I think it is always very helpful to look at customers and look at pain elements. And you have a lot of companies out there that are seeing traction and seeing sales, and you have a lot of companies out there where it is a projection of goodwill with the expectation that you're going to achieve success. And you mentioned the NVIDIA issue. There was real questions about were we hitting the AI bubble, given some announcement that Jensen had made. But then yesterday surprised the market with earnings that substantially outpaced even the high-end expectations. I received this text this morning and I wanted to just read it to you all because I think it's important for us all to just kind of keep this in context. There are going to be winners and there are going to be losers in this game. And as we think of the gold rush of California, many have talked about what we did with the internet boom, with the mobile boom, with everything. There's always been winners and losers. And a person shared this with me. Good to see you all yesterday. Read a great line this morning regarding the markets and NVIDIA's earnings report and question of AI bubble. And then I quote, "Are we really letting the shovel salesman tell us how the gold rush is going?" In quotation marks. So if you think about it, who made a lot of money in the gold rush? Were the shovel makers, as well as a wonderful company called Levi Strauss. Have figured out how to make jeans that would last in the dirt and mud and muck of gold digging. And so, we've got a real question as a result. The markets were up today, but then all of a sudden they're back down this afternoon. So, there's a lot of questions of are we at what's called the kind of a wobbly top of the market or not? The most important thing I think for those of you all that are on the call that are looking at your, first opportunities, second opportunities out of college, It's looking for that experience. David even talked about, some successes, some failures. I've had some successes, I've had some failures too. Right now, you're looking at where can you gain the greatest level of experience in which of the technology companies, if that's your chosen path that you can pursue, or through your own entrepreneurship efforts, where you're going to have an opportunity to try and tap an unserved market that has a real definitive need and that you think you can develop that product market fit for.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
great.
Thanks, Sammy. I think the comparison to those companies who used to sell shovels during the gold rush is super relevant. And I was also going to say that essentially that NVIDIA might not be the best representation of how the AI sector is doing in general, because they are behind all this. They are essentially powering all this hype, and they are not exactly having their hand on the pulse of the customers, right? If in the future, like the unit economics does not make sense for the businesses who are actually retail focused, then we could see a collapse in margins. And even margins are, most of it today is like subsidized, right? It's not sustainable. So yes, you're right, and that's a good example. Exactly.
Yeah, thank you, Amy. Thank you, David. That's great. I have one question, personally. I know I said I was going to ask questions just from the chat. I have one question I wanted to ask you guys before I get to those. A couple of years ago, before crazy AI hype, right? I mean, it obviously existed. A very common tagline on people's pitches, or even just the first sentence they would say to you when they were starting a new company, was, "We are the X for X market." And an example for that is we have a SpartUp alum, his name's Samir Saran, who said he started a company called ParkStash. And he said, "We're Airbnb for parking," right? Like that was his tagline. And now what I hear every time I meet someone who's like, I working on a startup, is, "We're using AI to do X," right? AI is the first words. "We're using AI to automate or to improve or to make X faster or to do this better." And at first, I think that there was a element of FOMO with that, where it was like, "Oh wow, like that's amazing! Like this could very well be one of the first teams that's working on AI optimization in this space, in this market for these customers." But now, when I hear it and I see other people say it to people like yourselves, like our judges, our speakers, the investors that come to our events, um, I see, even if it's not physical eye rolling, I can sense the eye rolling. And so my question to you guys is, how do I avoid the eye roll and how I describe my company if it's essentially an AI company powering a new solution to an existing problem?
Mhm. Yeah, I can quickly take this. So probably I would do two things. First, I would directly focus on the outcome and the results instead of saying, okay, I'm an AI startup and we are building AI enabled or AI powered X. I would directly focus on the outcome. I would say we cut audit times by 50%, or we cut the process by 60%. So that kind of instantly clicks. And so now I'm curious, right? How you're doing that. So that's one. And the second one would be, if I have some proprietary data or I have some unique outlook into something and I'm using that as an, like the secret sauce, and most of the startups have a secret sauce, I would directly talk about that, because that's also kind of instantly grabs the attention of a VC, of the person you're talking to, because that could potentially be your moat. And that could kind of, I'm going to mention this many times, but defensibility is huge with startups, right? And if you have that kind of proprietary data or some proprietary unique insights into something, you should definitely be upfront about it. Yeah.
Great points. Where I would add to what David has shared is keep in mind when you're talking about your solution and what is the problem you're solving out in the market, that investors have a very short attention span. So it is a bit of a marketing approach that you've got to take, of which is shorter time than even an elevator pitch. What is the most essential things that you need to get across that demonstrate not only are you unique, but that you all have, figured out what the lasting opportunity is, and that there's a TAM that makes it worthwhile to think about it from a ventures funding perspective. That's what's critical to get across. I'll share point blank. AI today is table stakes. Nobody's going to get investment money if you're not somehow integrating AI into your operations. So it's no longer a differentiator. It's an expectation that that's
Mm,
part of what you're trying to do. So when you think about the reason why you were the X of Y, which is we are the Airbnb of this space, is because if you can zero in on a market space that's demonstrated proven traction and provided returns to investors, they're always looking for what's going to be that new green space that's out there that they can go for. If you can quickly make that connection, you can pique their interest. And then you're talking about what's unique about your green space and what you do. And you say, of course, we're fully integrated in terms of being enabled with AI, of how we're leveraging it, how we're doing this, blah, 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 blah. But it's an afterthought at this point in time. If you lead for that, it actually really shows a lack of understanding of where the market is.
mm. Very good. Those were excellent answers. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
One one thing I really liked from both of those is, David, you mentioned the secret sauce, which is something we talk a lot about at the incubator. And Amy, you said like your AI is a expectation. Like, 10 years ago, if you were starting a software company, you wouldn't say we are using the internet to do this. Like that was the expectation when you pitched a software company.
Mhm.
And as we've advanced now, you're expected to improve um, various processes through AI. That isn't always adding a chatbot to the right side of your application. A lot of times that's not what it is. Um, but I wanted to ask about, in your kind of like startup opinions, whether this is as a founder or your marketing hat or your product management hat, like what do you look for when someone actually does tell you that their product is AI, it connects with you? What do you look for in, like, is this responsible? Is this going to work in my company? Is this going to be an actual improvement? Or is that something that, they didn't have to mention AI? Like, I'm not sure if that quite makes sense, but like, what's that thing that you look for when someone pitches you something with AI that makes you interested?
As an investor, or
As an investor
I
or
could
a customer?
provide, yeah, I could provide investor, because yeah, investor outlook on this. I would say mostly VCs are looking at, I just mentioned defensibility, and probably that's the main theme, right? When someone mentions an AI startup, um, the first question that comes up is like, how defensible is your IP, right? And because defensibility essentially then dictates whether you can have a good margin structure or not. And probably just to be brief about this, essentially a good litmus test is this: that when OpenAI or Gemini kind of they release a new feature, so there are two options, right? Either it kind of kills your startup, and we've seen this, right? Or it makes your startup more powerful. So initially, like even ChatGPT could not open a PDF file for you, right? And then there were all these different startups um, as add-ons, and you could like download an add-on, and then you could open and interact with PDF files. But with one update, those startups, and many of them, were kind of killed, right, overnight. So that's when those ideas are not defensible. But if we take another example, which is like the example of Perplexity, there has been this talk about, okay, are you an AI wrapper or not, right? And yes, many people used to think that being an AI wrapper is terrible in general, but that's not the case. Depends on whether your startup is capitalizing on the underlying AI improvements or not. Because for Perplexity, for instance, OpenAI is pouring all these billions into development, and they are benefiting from it for free, right? But then you would ask, like, okay, but how is Perplexity not going to be pushed out of market, right? How are they able to retain competitors? And the answer to that is the proprietary moat. Could be proprietary data, could be proprietary infrastructure. In case of Perplexity, they built AI native search and indexing engine, and they were able to have a really sub-document level context for search, and that was their moat. So this is just an example that you can actually benefit from the underlying AI improvements, but still stay in the business. Yeah.
Yeah, I think key things to keep in mind is it's tough to be a feeder business dependent upon somebody at a higher order than you are in terms of what you're delivering against. And, even when we make the joke about the shovel business versus the jean business, when the gold rush collapsed, their sales dropped, right? And so you have to have made enough profits to sustain any sorts of changes. And when we look at real estate as an example, when we had the crash and Lehman Brothers was wiped out and banks were wiped out, the real estate prices have ultimately recovered. But the question is about that point in time. And I think it's really relevant for college students right now to be aware of that. David talks a lot about defensibility, and I think that's critical. And defensibility matters when you're not in control of the models that you're building on. And so you have to figure out what's unique and distinct for you. I also think it's really critical, though, that we talk about what's needed today are a whole slew of different skill sets than that was looked at before. And what I mean by that is knowledge is now universally accessible. That's not the differentiation. It no longer is really about where did you go to school. It's really about what's your mindset on lifelong learning, right? How do you go about critical thinking? How do you go about problem solving? How do you go about adaptability and resilience? I know very few startups that have seen a linear line of their progression. They are very much ups, down, twists and turns, repositionings, restatements of where they're trying to go. And I've been part of several industries that have seen dramatic change. At one point in time, there used to be companies like MapQuest and others that would provide turn-by-turn instructions and unique elements in vehicles. And now, once Google opened that Google Maps up and Apple Maps, those whole industries went away. It used to be where photos were challenging to get, and now with Google Photos and others, and now if you think about the advent of AI, think about all the industries that are set up around image and photography that you can actually produce better elements through AI. Think about what's happening, the reason why we had the whole creative artists studio strikes and writer strikes down in LA. If you can reproduce the voice, look, and feel of actors through deep fakes and others, but do it in a way that you can control the external environment to create that context. So I think there's a couple of things with that for people to just think about, and that is think about an industry that's going to get disrupted. Well, as it gets disrupted, somebody else is going to fill that space in a new and different way. And so part of the ingenuity and the entrepreneurial thinking and the initiative is not only to think about the defensibility around existing, but what's going to get displaced that's going to need something else to fill it. And that's where the creative minds can come in and see what's possible.
Yes. Can I make a quick
Yeah.
announcement? Probably I was supposed to do this like during my introduction, but
Yeah.
sure. So for the people who are just joining, we're going to have a small gift for you for all the attendees, and yeah, you will just scan a QR code and our company OKX is gifting $50 worth of Bitcoin to every attendee. So yeah, if you would love to, you can absolutely
Yeah.
take that opportunity. Yeah.
Free money, David, only for the attendees, or are you going to do it for panelists too?
Yeah, of course.
I,
I'm just
I,
teasing you. That's very generous of you all to do that. That's great.
I thank you, David. I think I hinted at this online or before the event, but I threw it up on the screen share here. If you want to, go ahead and scan this. We'll also send this out via the post attendee email. I think it's valid for a day or two, so I'll send this out right after, and you can do it from your laptop later if you'd like. Um,
Yeah.
thanks
Yeah.
for bringing
Thank
this
you.
up. Um,
Yeah, of course.
this actually
David, I was
reminds me
worried you
though
were going to
of
offer us like a signed copy of your book or something. This is amazing.
um, I think this is a good opportunity to maybe talk about how you both use AI in your day-to-day work. Um, and maybe I know it's not exactly on the topic of like building a startup outside of the AI buzzwords, but like what does it look like implementing, now that some of the dust has settled and you've realized, 100% of my life doesn't have to be AI. What does it look like kind of day-to-day AI usage for you?
Well, I'll start off with that. I'm a early stage startup trying to drive a national movement where every family with a child K through 16 has a family AI game plan. So something very different. You can see in the background, I've got a 12-year-old daughter. I'm on the board for the Girl Scouts. I'm heavily involved in youth sports. And I am just truly concerned for this generation where they're being taught to fear AI and they're not being given the tools to understand how to work with it and how it can support their growth and development, and realizing that already today, enterprise level hires are expecting the graduates to know and understand it. And if I were to give an example, there is a university on the peninsula that has made it very clear it's not San Jose State. I'm not actually familiar with what San Jose State's actual policy is right now, so I'm referring to a different university, but they've made it very clear no AI use by the students. By the same token, you've got Georgia Tech over in Atlanta, Georgia, that has it specifically on their website that makes it very clear that they expect their students, not only in the application process, but through their educational experience to learn, use, and know how to deploy AI. And so, having been a corporate tech exec and now shifting over into a nonprofit, I use AI extensively. I have two full-time employees that work for me that are in the Philippines. I actually have a San Jose State University intern. And then I also have someone who I've hired twice before professionally, working with me as a digital demand gen expert. But when you think about it, when you're this sort of small, I mean, when I was at NetApp, I had 300 employees that reported to me in a $100 million budget. The reality is I can do much of what I did there through AI. Trying to get a press release out would have taken 10 people, 2 weeks, tons of legal reviews, and lots of back and forth. I can write a press release now in conjunction with the expertise and the knowledge that I already have from experience, get it out and release it to an AI generated list of media members, and I can be done in 15 minutes. So in an entrepreneurial environment, it's a day-to-day utilization for me. The difference is, and this is where I think there's real challenges for folks that we've got to rethink this a bit. You may have seen many of the articles like New York Times and others that have talked about the bottom rungs of the ladder being broken. That's because the entry-level roles can easily be replaced through AI actions. But what can't be replaced is the wisdom and the experience to know. So I actually see companies moving towards looking for apprenticeships, and that people that they want to develop and grow, they're just not going to need the same quantity. So one of the most important things I would say, just like how I'm using it day to day, is find a way, whether it's in real life outside of San Jose State or within your classes where it's authorized, figure out how to leverage AI from an ideation standpoint, or to structure your day, or to accelerate your ability to move through redundant programs more effectively. I've run workshops called AI Irreplaceable specifically for college students to help them set themselves up for success and to be of target and of interest to the employers. And yet, the reality for this is it's only going to exponentially increase. And so employers are going to be asking the question from day one, talk to me about how you've actually leveraged, used, or what you've learned from AI. And part of that comes with knowing and understand where its limitations are so that you protect the brand and the interests of the company as well, and you know how to discern between those two. David?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that probably the main point I want to make is that, Amy, as you said, like when you have expert level knowledge into something, AI becomes a really powerful tool just to really amplify your output, right? And but at the same time, kind of AI to some extent leveled the playing field, right? It's super easy right now to have some minimum level of output, like or knowledge, but still, to me, I would point out like two things just to play a bit of devil's advocate here. Um, to me, probably right now I'm being really cautious with the way I use AI. I mostly use AI to as a sparring partner, just to bounce off ideas with AI, and maybe I'm not looking at from one particular angle, and it really helps me have broader coverage in terms of what I should consider, right? Yeah, just stress testing my ideas and also generating some ideas which then I vet myself. But probably, yeah, this is also super relevant in corporate context for sure in terms of guardrails and just AI hallucinations and what can be on the other side of this, right? But even in personal communication, for instance, to me, like when someone sends me an email or a message and it's like obvious that it was AI written, to me, it's like a bit of a turnoff just because it indicates that, okay, maybe this person did not put any effort on this in this. So I think in future where we're going to have this flood of AI content in general, right? Human effort once again becomes scarce and scarcity. And yeah, I think we humans are going to value human effort more uniquely. And that could be a way to actually differentiate yourself and actually start doing more personal, more of work like personally. Yes, of course, with the help of AI, but still there should be some unique human touch to everything you do. So right now, that's the way I'm thinking about it.
Very good. Those are
Thank you.
great responses, both Amy and David. I have gotten several questions in the chats, and I'm gonna, in the interest of getting to as many of these as possible, I'm gonna direct each of these two questions. I'm gonna direct a question at a panelist. So this one specifically, I'm gonna ask you, David. So this question came from someone in our chat. How can I market an AI startup to prevent people from just simply thinking that the startup is just another cheap ChatGPT wrapper?
Yeah, I think we kind of already covered this question. Essentially, it's about, for once again, focusing on the outcome. Are you reducing some time needed to complete a process? Are you reducing audits, for instance, or are you reducing manual review time? So you should definitely, absolutely focus on the outcomes, which are measurable metrics. So that's one. And the second one is, once again, proprietary data. So what is proprietary about your startup? Like if anyone can kind of chain all these different APIs together, and like AI is becoming a commodity, right? Anyone can access these AIs. Like you pay $20 per month and you're good, right? in that case, so when that's kind of the table stakes, as Amy said, like what's your differentiator? And that's where the proprietary data comes in, or it could be anything. Like, and probably one more thing, probably which relates to this. Once again, the good old expertise into a field is super interesting and super necessary. If you are pitching a venture capitalist, for instance, there could be many types of founders, but a person who came to a field with some AI tools and now they are looking for a problem, let's say in radiology, right? That's totally different from when a person spent 20 years in radiology and they are expert in their field. And now they are using this new tool, which is AI, which unlocks lots of things for them. So those are two totally different propositions for a venture capital firm. And the good old expertise is super valuable. So there are no shortcuts once again. And yeah, probably I would just emphasize those points. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you, David. Amy, the next question is going to be directed to you here. So, a follow-up to the comment, AI is just the expectation. Can you please expand on this concept from the perspective that bad implementation models or base level LLMs are simply just used for the sake of using AI? So, what are these expectations in a little bit more detail? What does AI mean in the context of these expectations?
It is really interesting to have these conversations because there's a little bit of this balancing between those that have the tremendous expertise and experience that they can use to apply into AI and accelerate, yet there's still a slower growth of willingness to try, but those that are going to see leaps in their careers and or companies. And then you have those with less experience, but no preconceived notions about how work needs to get done, and will be looking for ways in which to accelerate through using AI and others to do it. But when we think about the companies in terms of an expectation, if I'm a venture capitalist, I loved, I think, Max, it may have been, I think it was you or Eli, I can't remember now who, sorry, that said you wouldn't talk about the internet if you were an internet company 10 years ago. The VCs expect that you are going to incorporate AI into your daily business operations, whether that be through rerouting invoices or tracking customer inquiries or doing competitive research that you might have in the past given to an intern. There's a whole slew of AI related activities that you are going to ask AI to do. And you don't want to get caught up talking about that as if that is something new. That's where, your company is AI enabled from that standpoint. That's different than being an AI company. An AI company really where you have built a foundational technology or models that others depend upon. And so I see a lot of people just slapping AI on their description of their company, but they're not really an AI company. They're simply AI enabled. They're using tools that are out there to allow them to do their job more effectively, to be able to redeploy their limited capital resources in a way that allow them to focus on market development, product development, customer acquisition, etc. So it's important to know the distinction between those two. If you're AI enabled, fully table stakes. If you are an AI company, then you really have to talk about what David talked about, which is the uniqueness of the data that you're securing, the defensibility about it. What is the unique problem that you're actually solving that existing models aren't doing, right? And to some extent, you're looking at this from the standpoint, again, of trying to figure out what is going to be that disruption that will happen in the marketplace and being on the just bleeding edge of that disruption to where you're the one who's able to come in with an AI solution, truly as an AI related company that allows you to go after filling that disruption in a way that accelerates company success.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, Amy. That was a great response. Eli, I'm going to give you an option. There are several more questions in the chat here. Do you have one that you wanted to ask as your last question, or should we pick one of these?
Um, I want to first say I see all the questions. Thank you everybody so much for submitting these. There's some of these that are more geared towards maybe one-on-one or following up in the breakout rooms after. So I'm gonna leave those for now. Um, the last question I want to ask from the chat. Um, there's some good ones here. I'm going to go with one from May. Thank you, May. This is a more general one, not only about AI. But May wants to know about early stage startups joining accelerators and incubators. They say a lot of them require equity. Have you seen giving out early, or have you seen how giving out equity early can affect a startup's future growth or defensibility? Um, and I want to kind of balance this question with how has this changed now that many startups can accomplish a lot more in a quicker amount of time? And kind of calling it back to David's very first response on like companies are getting revenue faster than ever. There's a lot of companies that have clearly found product market fit. Maybe they're not profitable yet, but they're certainly getting people to pay them quicker than crypto companies and past internet companies have. Um, how would you kind of balance that? Like with revenue being so easy to come by, seemingly, how would you balance being an early stage startup and giving equity or keeping it all?
Yeah, I would say that in general, like those early rounds are super impactful in terms of how much equity founders are going to retain, especially if there are multiple rounds and if it goes beyond Series E, right? Um, and in a sense, you have to be super careful about the equity you're going to give to these accelerators if they are requiring equity. But here, it's once again depends on the name, right? If you are getting into a high profile, super well known accelerator, it might be worth it. Maybe it's Y Combinator, or maybe it's something which is like super well known because it's going to aid you from the perspective of brand. Like, yeah, of course, like because Y Combinator alumni are even personal brands. They have personal branding, right? So even though the first startup might not be successful, it's like a lifelong badge. It's very similar to graduating from Harvard or Yale, or it's a lifelong badge. So I would be conscious of that. It's always a trade-off game. So depending on the profile of the accelerator, I would consider it. As for the revenue which Eli mentioned, and all the startups being able to generate significant revenue early on, achieve significant product market fit, I would say that in a sense, AI tools are competing with accelerators in a sense that now you can refine your startup on an early stage so much more with the help of AI than before, right? And AI helps with rapid prototyping as well. So in a sense, AI is kind of a competing technology um, compared to accelerators, but there still can be value in accelerators, of course, like getting real human feedback, getting feedback from people who've seen it all. So it's super valuable still, but depends on a case. It's probably going to be a case by case decision depending on the equity you're going to forfeit, etc.
Let me just add one element to what David shared. I'd say it's going to come down to the network, the network that accelerator will offer. relative to your space, what you're trying to do, whether that be markets, customers, or financing in today's environment.
Yeah, thank you both. I totally agree. It's kind of a weird concept when you first get into the startup world, but the finance and dollar amount that you get from your first check is usually not the main value draw. Um, there's it's not easy, but there are many ways to get money to pay for operational costs and things like that. But there are not many ways to find that perfect first customer that's going to take a chance on you. And that's just a huge part of it. Um, I think it's about 5 o'clock, so I was thinking we can try and get the breakout rooms going, and get some of those individual questions answered that I saw. Um,
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so the way that this is going to work is Jalen right now is going to put both of our speakers. Well, I guess we can't really do this via Zoom, but maybe if reactions are enabled, people can give a round of applause for our speakers. Normally, this is the part where we would all clap and say, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much. This was so insightful." So thank you, David and Amy, for both being here. We are now going to place you each in your own breakout rooms. So I know maybe a few people have joined since I did this spiel at the beginning, but the way that this is going to work is Amy and David are going to basically be in their own breakout rooms. We are going to keep this main Zoom open. Eli and I will be here to answer any questions you guys might have while you wait. In order to show interest that you want to meet with a speaker, you're going to have to raise your hand using the raise hand icon